This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill, too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.
Father, or should I call you Steve? Since it's a new year, maybe we should start cooking fresh with fewer smoke alarms this time. Your cooking's improving, but I can see the stress in your eyes. Anna's mom used this Blue Apron assemble and bake thing during our playdate. Pre-chopped ingredients, over 40 grams of protein, and just one pan to clean up. She just tossed it in the oven and boom, plating like she's got followers. So go to blueapron.com, Steve. Make 2026 the year you win dinner. Blue Apron. Get 50% off your first 2 orders plus free shipping with code LISTEN50. Terms and conditions apply. Visit blueapron.com/terms for more.
Hello and welcome to mini episode number 498 of Real Life Ghost Stories. And I have 2 spooky stories for you today. And the last story comes from the 11th of November 2025. And story number 1 comes from Andy. I've had a few paranormal experiences in my life. Some I went looking for. Others just sort of happened. Most of them, I'm sure, have perfectly normal explanations. But this one is different. This one still leaves me wondering. Back in 1993, I had a paper round. I'd have to be up ridiculously early to get to the newsagents and collect my papers. So I'd be creeping around the house in that strange half-light before dawn, while everyone else was still asleep. That morning started like any other. I got up, bleary-eyed, and made my way across the landing towards the bathroom. I passed my parents' closed door, then came to my sister's room. Their door was open as usual, and out of habit I glanced in just to make sure I hadn't woken them. That's when I saw him. A man, standing at the end of my sister's bed. It wasn't a trick of the light or a shadow on the wall. It was an entirely solid, pitch-black figure of an adult man. No face, no details, just this impossibly dark shape. And it was there. I froze, my heart pounding. There was a man in the house, in my sister's room. I quickly backed away and pressed myself against the wall that separated their room from my parents'. I remember thinking, what do I do? I must have stood there for a few seconds trying to come up with a plan. Then I ran back to my room, opened my bureau and grabbed my pocket knife. It wasn't much, barely 3 inches long, but at that moment it was the best that I had. I went back to the wall, took a deep breath and forced myself to move. My sisters needed me. I spun into the room, knife in hand. And there was nothing. The room was empty, completely normal, no sign that anyone had ever been there. I just stood there, confused, my heart still racing. Where had he gone? How could he have vanished so quickly? After a few moments, I convinced myself that it must have been my imagination. I had just woken up. It was still half dark. Maybe my eyes had played tricks on me. So I pushed it aside, got ready for my round and got on with my day. But it stayed with me. I could still see that figure, as clear as anything. It would probably stay with me forever. For years I told people about it. What I thought might have been a ghost. I even told my family at some point. And I definitely managed to terrify my middle sister with the story. Then, years later, when I was about 17, I was sitting up late one night with my dad and my then girlfriend. We got talking about ghosts, and I mentioned the black figure in my sister's room. My dad frowned and said, "You've never told me about that before." I said, "I have, Dad, I'm sure I have." He shook his head, and then he told me something that stopped me cold. Apparently, when I was about 3 or 4, I shared the same room with my middle sister. And back then, we both used to complain about a black man standing at the end of our bed. I had no memory of that at all. None. But when he said it, I just burst into tears. 17 years old, sitting there with my dad and my girlfriend, and I'm crying like a little kid. It was the realisation that what I had seen might have actually been real after all. That it wasn't just a silly trick my mind had played on me. It was something I had known before, something that I had somehow forgotten. And that was a little bit overwhelming. It's not the only strange thing that's ever happened to me, but it's the one that still makes the hairs on the back of my neck stand up when I think about it. Because whatever I saw that morning in 1993, I think I had already encountered it at the end of my own bed as an infant. Do people still do the paper round? Is that still a thing? I always really admired kids who did the paper round in school because I felt like, God, you're up at like 5 o'clock in the morning and then you're doing a paper round and then getting into school. Mad. And I could feel your fear in this story of that moment of looking into your sister's bedroom and the realisation that there is somebody standing in your sister's bedroom. There is a man standing in your little sister's bedroom. You would be terrified, petrified. Of course you would. You'd be like, what am I going to do to protect them? There is a man standing in their bedroom. And I sort of, my heart at you going and grabbing your pocket knife and being like, right, I'm going to have to do this. I'm going to have to protect them. And again, it's another iteration of Hatman or whatever, this shadow entity, this solid black entity just standing at the bottom of children's beds, watching them sleep. Maybe I am reading this all wrong. Maybe it's some sort of protective guardian entity and it just happens to get seen every so often. And because it's a black shadow figure or a Hatman type figure, we assume that it's a negative entity and maybe it just isn't. Like, what is going on there? Is it to do with the house? Is it to do with the energy of the people in the house? Is it to do with the land that the house sits on? And I can completely understand your reaction to like burst into tears when your dad told you that you and your sister used to complain about a black shadow man standing at the end of your bed. Of course you were crying like a child. Of course you were. I mean, first of all, you were 17. You are still a child, really. And to have that fear validated must have been absolutely terrifying. Because I think in some way, you kind of go, you tell people these stories and you're kind of hoping that somebody's going to give you a rational explanation, right? You're kind of hoping that somebody's going to go, oh, that was just, I don't know, a waking dream. It was just sleep paralysis. It was just your imagination. You were just overtired. And then suddenly your dad tells you that you and your sister had experienced this when you were children and used to complain about it. Of course, that would be deeply, deeply upsetting because it kind of shakes up everything you know. It changes the world as you know it, which is crazy. And that always frustrates me, I think, when people are really dismissive of anybody's paranormal experience, you know, where they're like, oh, whatever, it was just this, move on. But for some people, paranormal experiences can quite literally shake the fabric of your understanding of the world around you, which is a really massive thing to happen to you.
In a world where January is supposed to be boring, one staple of the holidays refuses to end. The great deals at Verizon. The joy just keeps on coming. Right now, you can save on 4 new phones and 4 lines. Critics agree it's the deal that keeps on giving. Come into Verizon and save on 4 new phones and 4 lines on unlimited welcome. Additional terms apply. See Verizon.com for details.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever think about switching your insurance companies to see if you could save some cash? Progressive makes it easy. Just drop in some details about yourself and see if you're eligible to save money when you bundle your home and auto policies. The process only takes minutes, and it could mean hundreds more in your pocket. Visit Progressive.com after this episode to see if you could save. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Potential savings will vary. Not available in all states.
Amazon Pharmacy presents Painful Thoughts.
20 more minutes to kill in the pharmacy before my prescription is ready. Maybe I'll grab some deeply discounted out-of-season Halloween candy. I never had a chocolate pumpkin with raisins before. Those were raisins, right?
Next time, use Amazon Pharmacy. We deliver. And no, those were not raisins. Amazon Pharmacy. Healthcare just got less painful.
Hi, this is Matt from P1 with Matt and Tommy, and this episode is sponsored by eBay. The cars you'll find on eBay are just different. They come with a story that you can't wait to share. Like this 1973 Dodge Charger on eBay that has been tucked away in an Arizona barn for over 40 years, only 55,000 miles, and somehow in great running order. It even has a rare sunroof. Suddenly, a car that was hidden for decades is being delivered in just a few clicks with eBay's secure purchase. All the paperwork handled. There are thousands of cars on eBay, from unique finds like the Pontiac Grand Prix SJ to daily drivers, and now with a new way to buy them. eBay. Things people love.
And our second story today comes from Brookie. To start off my tales, I should let you know that I am what you would refer to as one spooky bitch. Like total drop kick down the stairs material. My earliest memory is of being in my crib in our old trailer. You know, the ones with the fake wood panels. And seeing shadow figures moving on my walls, like actual people, not just tricks of the light. I remember there were 3 of them and they looked like they were wearing cloaks. So yeah, not exactly the happiest first memory ever. This is just the beginning of my whole life steeped in the paranormal world. I have countless stories to share, but I figured I would only share a couple to start off with. My mum always told me that I was connected to the earth in a way that she could never quite understand, but she always trusted it. I used to rock back and forth repeatedly, and she told me that I used to chant in what sounded like a different language when I did. She always said that it sounded Native American. We are descendants of several tribes. But seeing as how neither of us know the native tongues, I'm not sure if that can be totally accurate. More freaky than connected by nature, I know, but she swore that it was the connection to our native roots that gave me this sight. There were many days that she would say the weather forecast called for a bright sunny day for the entire day, but I would look at her and tell her it was going to rain. She said whenever I said that, it always did. Like I could sense it coming before anyone else could. We would watch tornado weather from the front porch. It's totally a stupid American thing, and I totally still do it to this day. And she always trusted my judgment on whether or not we should go inside or not to take shelter. Sometimes I wonder if she exaggerates her stories from those times. But I do feel a very strong pull to nature, and I always trust my gut when it comes to weather. Last spring we had a horrible string of storms, and my dog, who was an outside all-year dog, would not go in his house. Just stood out in front of his little door. I kept getting this nagging feeling that he wasn't safe. So while my dog was yelling at me about having the dog in the house, I called him inside. Not even a minute later, there was a huge crash outside. The massive pine tree in our neighbour's yard had snapped in half from the wind gusts, and the top was speared in our backyard, right where my dog had been standing the minute before. My husband didn't question me bringing the dog in for the rest of the storms. I have many paranormal tales, some having to do with cryptids or creatures, some with aliens, and a lot with spirits. The next I would like to share with you deals with myself living next door to a house that possibly had a fairy attached to it. I have no idea of the validity of this, but I was once told long ago that if you see a rose bush with only one rose bloomed on it, then it's a fairy bush. The friend who shared this told me it was best to just stay clear of rose bushes like this, and if I ever had one, never to disturb it. Flash forward a couple of years and I'm 22, freshly graduated from college and juggling working at a bar at night and subbing in a school during the day. I lived in a large house with several of my friends and my boyfriend at the time. The living situation wasn't exactly healthy, but the rent was cheap and I had a small upstairs room all to myself. My room was sandwiched in between 2 other rooms and had the only window facing towards our neighbour's house on that level. Our backyard went up a hill and into a small wooded area in the middle of town, and our neighbour to the left had a beautiful garden along the fence line. In that garden resided a rose bush with a single lush red bloom on it. I always admired how gorgeous it was, keeping its plump petals even though the weather was sweltering. I was always careful to keep my distance, heeding my friend's warning from before. As I said before, the weather was rough in the summer. The southern tip of Ohio is extremely humid, and it makes the air super hot and sticky. If I had the luxury of being off for the day, I would lay in my bed with a fan blowing on me and the window open just to try and get some airflow. The air was always so stagnant in that house. Sometimes I would forget to close my window before I left to go to work at the bar for the night. When I would come home, my room would be nice and cool, and I would fall asleep with the window still open, hoping to keep the cool air moving a little longer in the morning. Every time I did this, I would wake up sometime later to a smell. The smell of dried roses. I would lay there breathing in this scent and feeling super hazy, like when you've smoked just enough weed to feel chill, but not enough to have the spins. Now, I know what you're thinking. Oh, she was just high. But I swear I was always sober on these nights. I needed to keep subbing to pay for my student loans and car payments and couldn't afford to fail a drug test. Anyway, I would be laying there in this haze with my eyes shut. But I would see my room, clear as day, with my eyes shut. Weird, I know. Then I would eventually drift off to sleep. I would have the most outlandish dreams after this, like nothing scary but totally wackadoo. I would wake up the next day, the scent still filling my nostrils, and I would always have the worst migraine after. I know I should have kept the window closed. I even told myself I would the next time. But every time I came home like that, I just thought to myself, yeah, it's probably fine, and I left it be. Almost like my resolve from earlier was completely gone. The next morning, migraine in tow, I always swore that I would close it, but the cycle just repeated itself. I shared these happenings with my closest friend in the house, and he told me that he and his girlfriend had never experienced anything like that. My boyfriend hadn't either. But again, I was the only one in the house with a window that faced the neighbours and their rosebush. This continued to happen until the rosebud finally withered and fell off the bush. After that, I never had the sensation again. So was there a fairy visiting me in my sleep on those nights? Was I the only one experiencing it because my room was the only one with a window facing it? I'm not sure, but it never happened if my window was closed, and I've never dealt with anything like that since. But I've also never experienced a fairy's rosebush since then either. The next two tales I have for you come from when I was 17. I was a senior in high school, and we had just moved into a new house post my parents' divorce. It was a pretty ugly affair, and the three of us, my mum, my sister and I, were all happy to have a place to ourselves with no abuse. The house we moved into was my mum's dream home. She still lives there to this day. My sister and I loved it too, even though the house came with quite a few live-in guests. My mum doesn't believe in spirits. The concept scares her so badly that she refuses to even entertain the idea of them being real. But let me assure you, her house is 100% haunted as fuck. While I could probably write a short novel on all the activity in this house, I will pare it down to these two tales for this email. One of the scariest encounters I ever had was in this house. My mother used to own a 5-foot mirror that stayed in her closet in our old double wide. When we moved, she gave it to me to keep in the corner of my room, since I had to leave my old dresser with a mirror behind when we came to live in the new house. It wasn't attached to anything, just propped up in the corner directly opposite to my bed. One night I randomly woke up. I couldn't tell you if I had a bad dream or if I needed to take a leak. I just remember waking up, sitting up and rubbing the sleep out of my eyes. I caught movement out of the corner of my eye. I shit you not. My tall mirror was no longer leaning against the corner of my wall. It was now standing up straight as if someone had grabbed the top of it and pulled it up to stand at full height. I just sat there, dumbfounded, as I now saw myself in the mirror because of the angle change. Then whatever was holding it let go, because it tipped to the right and skidded down my wall and crashed onto my floor. I don't think I've ever moved so fast in my life. I gave Usain Bolt a run for his money. I was down the hall and in my mum's bed in seconds. I leapt into bed and clung to her. She woke up freaking out, obviously, and tried to figure out what was wrong with me, but I couldn't speak. I just started crying and clutching on to her. She started reciting the Lord's Prayer and would occasionally stop to ban Satan from our home and then started reciting again, until I finally calmed down enough to fall asleep. She told me later that she was so distraught because of how fast my heart was beating. She thought there was something seriously wrong with my heart and was almost going to call 911 until she finally felt the heart rate start to go down. When I went into my room the next day, my mirror was laying on the ground, halfway behind my dresser, and miraculously it was not broken. I had a very hard time sleeping for a couple of weeks after that. Fast forward to summer, I'm graduated and laying about the house in the days before I moved to university. Like I said, many spirits resided in this home, but besides the mirror incident, none of them ever came across as scary. They were even quite hospitable. Oftentimes, ghost kids, I assumed they were kids, would play on the stairs right outside my room. They would throw a ball up and down the stairs and you could always hear the thump, thump, thump of their ball. The night before I took my ACT for the third time, they were playing on the stairs like normal. I was super stressed out about retaking the test, and I finally got so fed up that I knocked on my wall and called out, "Guys, please, I have a super important test in the morning, I need to go to sleep." And it stopped instantly. Not another ghostly peep for the entire night. So, extremely hospitable spirits. But not this one time. One day during the summer, I had the house to myself. I took this opportunity to lay about on the couch and read a book. Our dog was laying asleep at my feet, and I was enjoying my book, until I got this uneasy feeling in my stomach. Then I heard it, breathing in the room with us. I knew it wasn't my dog. It didn't sound like him, and I knew no one was home because we had a chime on the door whenever someone walked in. The breathing got closer, and I started to feel it on my neck. It was hot, and my nerves were standing on end. I recited the prayer my mum taught me. I rid Satan from this home in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, Amen, and the feeling started to ease up. My nerves started to calm down and I went back to reading. My dog had slept through all of this. Something really important my mum has always told me is that when you're casting evil from your home, there must be no doubt. You must fully trust in the Lord to take care of it or it'll come back stronger than before. When I started to feel uneasy again, and worried that it would come back, as if answering my thoughts, it was back in the living room with me. The unease was pure dread and I felt its breath again. This time I slammed my book shut, hopped up from the couch, and turned around to face whatever it was. Nothing was in my vision, but I could feel its presence right in front of me. I shouted, "I rid Satan from this home in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost," right at it. Then I heard a huge crash coming from the adjoining dining room. I ran around the stairs to see that one of the kitchen chairs had been flipped over. The feeling was gone, and I was left shaken, but feeling okay. My dog finally woke his lazy ass up and came over to me. Some help he was. I picked up the chair and reset it. Then I took my dog outside and we went for a drive until my mum and my sister got home a little while later. I never told them what happened, and I never experienced anything evil in the house again. My next tale for you is a short one. I was dating my current husband at the time and we were heading home from my mum's house. The main road was closed, so I had to take back roads to get home. These back roads are deep in the holler, and there's plenty of twists and hills to go over. As I crest a hill, I see them. What looks like hundreds of people in old-timey clothing bordering either side of the road. Men, women and children all turn their heads to us as we drive through them, the headlights creating an eerie red reflection that you get off countless pairs of eyes. It was Sunday night in Amish country. The local Amish communities were all walking home from the late night Sunday service, in the dark along the road. They had no lights. They were all totally normal people, but holy shit, that was fucking scary. My last tale for you comes from just a month ago. I'm now 32 and live with my husband and 4-year-old daughter in an old house built in the 30s. I've lived in this house since 2019 and I've never really felt anything here. That is, until about a month ago. My husband was out hunting for the evening, so I was doing the bedtime routine with my daughter by myself. We had just gotten upstairs and were sitting down for a story when I heard someone come up the stairs. Surprised that he had come home so soon, I yelled out, "Johnny, we're up here," thinking my husband had come home. Nothing followed but dead silence. The adjoining room, his office, remained dark. "Is Daddy home?" my daughter asked, wanting to see him. "I'm not sure, dear. Pick out a story and stay put in your room. I forgot something downstairs," I say, trying to stay calm. My initial thought wasn't ghosts. My thought was that someone had just broken into our house. I carefully surveyed my husband's office, and then I turned the light on. I checked every possible hiding place and then slowly crept downstairs. The upstairs used to be an attic, so the stairs lead straight into our bedroom. I quickly looked around my bedroom and saw no one, then headed straight for the bat beside my bed. Bat in tow, I checked the rest of the house and double-checked the locks. Everything was locked up. No one was in our house. I go up to my daughter's bedroom and I tell her that Daddy isn't home. She's a little sad but perks up for her story, song and then loves before I took her into bed. I clearly heard the distinct creaks of our stairs, enough to yell out for my husband. So what was it? Do I have spirits here too? I wouldn't be surprised. Almost every place I've lived in was haunted. As long as it doesn't mess with my daughter, it's fine to pop in and out. I don't know if you're a believer, and honestly you're welcome to have your own opinions. I'm very aware that mental health can come to play in a lot of situations. I'm no stranger to mental health struggles, and to some of you that probably discredits all of my stories. A lot of people in their low points experience some terrible things. But I'll tell you this. At my lowest of lows, when I've struggled the most, I've never experienced anything. It's why I think that I'm only just now noticing something in my house. I've been struggling with depression since my daughter was born, but I'm finally coming out of my funk. Not trying to sway anyone's thoughts, just food for thought. I do think that's a really good point. I think that two things can be true at once. You can have mental health issues and you can also have paranormal experiences. And I think there are obviously incidences where people's mental health issues completely informs the things that they experience, see, hear, etc. So if you are experiencing things in your house and you're thinking, oh, this is weird, I'm seeing things, I'm hearing things, check your carbon monoxide detector. Go and speak to friends, speak to family, maybe visit a GP. It might not necessarily be paranormal, right? But that doesn't mean that all paranormal experiences can be attributed to mental health. And it also doesn't mean that if you have mental health issues, then your experiences are automatically dismissed as not being paranormal. We have seen a pattern over the years on this podcast of times of high stress, whereby there are issues in the household, whether it's an abusive partner, whether it's families going through a divorce, whether it's substance abuse, whatever it is, times of high stress seem to exacerbate negative energy in a household. So I do think that mental health and the paranormal are like intrinsically linked, both in a psychological sense, but also in like a sense with energy and the world around us. And going back to the very beginning of your story, I love how your mum told you that you were connected to the earth. That's a beautiful way of phrasing it, you know, rather than just being like, you're a creepy kid and you're freaking me out because you know things and I feel like you shouldn't know these things. Just saying you're connected to the earth. You seem to understand things like the weather, or in the case of, you know, in hurricane weather, you're like, I just have this feeling I need to bring the dog in, and then, you know, a tree snaps and falls in that exact place. You know, all those little intuitive things. The idea of just being connected to the earth is really quite lovely. And look, do you know, I wonder if that's somehow connected to your feelings around that rose bush outside the house. If you want to go into the lore and the history and the thinking around fairy trees and fairy bushes, then by all means, Google it, because if I start talking about it, I won't stop. But there is a long-held belief that if you have a bush or a tree that grows in a field or a patch of land on its own, then it might potentially be a fairy tree. It may be, like in this instance, that it has a singular bloom, or if the tree gets damaged, it still continues to bloom. There's lots of different takes on the folklore around fairy trees. And there is also thoughts around whether or not fairies, fairy trees, etc., whether or not you're in the proximity, they have the ability to like bewitch you, almost hypnotize you. So I wonder if something like that was happening here. If you felt like this was a fairy tree and you are somebody who is potentially connected to the earth, as your mum said, that's why you were experiencing it above other people. And I always think with these stories as well, like moving on to your next story about the mirror in the corner of your room, I always think there's a real attention-seeking nature to a lot of paranormal activity. Like, I need to show you that I'm here. And something like moving a huge mirror in your room is a very definite way to say, I am here and I have power and I can show you that I'm here. And I can't even imagine what your mom was like when she was just there going, is my child unwell? Do I call an exorcist? Do I call a priest? Or do I call an ambulance? Which one is it? And again, I kind of love these stories where the ghosts like listen to people, where people are like, okay, you can stay, but you can't come into my bedroom or whatever. Or in this instance, I know that you're playing on the stairs, but can you give it a rest because I've got a test tomorrow? And they're like, oh, okay, sorry. They're like the best housemates ever. Until, of course, it gets to the point where they're heavy breathing in the room with you, which really does sound terrifying. And I always think it's amazing that your body intuitively knows that something is coming when you get that like uneasy, I can't shake this feeling. And again, I feel like this is all designed to frighten people. And there's also a really powerful message within this, even if you're not religious, even if you're not Christian, even if, you know, you don't believe in God or whatever. I think if you feel as though something has invaded your space, having the ability to say, no, I don't want this, I'm not frightened of you, but you're not welcome here, whatever it is, has a real kind of, like I said, even if you're not religious, it has a real ability to ground, I think, and to make you feel like you are in control of that space. Also, I know that we see pets as like paranormal beacons, but sometimes they are just a bit useless, you know? Sometimes they're just like, oh, I'm not bothered with this, or actually I'm having a really good nap, so I'm not going to move. And I do love stories that have a completely non-paranormal explanation. Like if I, crested a hill in the middle of the night and I see all these people in old-timey clothing and I'm like, what the fuck? And of course, in this instance, it's people from Amish country who are, making their way home from late night service. Very reasonable explanation. But in the immediacy, I would be like, what in the heck is going on here? And I'm curious to know if your daughter seems to experience any of these things too, because your mum described you as being connected to the earth when you were a child and you had all these kind of weird intuitions and almost like premonitory experiences. Is your daughter demonstrating the same things or similar things? Because we know that these things often seem to be genetic and passed on down a family line. So I'd love to know if she's experiencing things as well. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. Thank you to Andy and Brookie for sending in your stories. Remember, the last story came from the 11th of November 2025. And if you would like to send in your story, you can do so by emailing it to reallifeghoststoriespodcast@gmail.com. You can also check out the website reallifeghoststoriespodcast.com. And if you are desperate for some extra content, you can subscribe to the Patreon. That is patreon.com/reallifeghoststories, where for $5 a month or for $2 a month, you can get access to heaps of extra content, as well as every single main and mini episode completely ad-free. And on that note, I shall see you next time.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Insurance. Do you ever find yourself playing the budgeting game? Shifting a little money here, a little there, and hoping it all works out? Well, with the Name Your Price tool from Progressive, you can be a better budgeter and potentially lower your insurance bill, too. You tell Progressive what you want to pay for car insurance, and they'll help you find options within your budget. Try it today at Progressive.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Price and coverage match limited by state law. Not available in all states.